No, no. I can't watch this. You know, these old reviews were pretty bad. I think it's redemption time. Before we begin, let me just say that boxing is easily my favorite sport. In fact, it's the only one I've ever seriously followed. But anyway, back in these days, I didn't script and all I had was a headset, Windows Movie Maker, and a Windows XP computer with an old video capture card to boot. Yes, actually I still have that. But I was never happy with those old reviews. They were poorly put together, so why not try again? Now, since then, I am aware that technically there is a 10th game on Action 52, but I don't really count that one. Also, there's no way I'll ever get my hands on one of those cartridges, so bear with me here. Well, I'm gonna run through all of these in this video and hopefully correct some of the mistakes I've made. James Buster Douglas. This game I'm starting with because it was one of the original Genesis titles. In the arcades, it actually had nothing to do with James Douglas and was simply called Final Blow. But this change was done in order to try and one-up Nintendo, who had Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, because of the upset of the year when Tyson lost to Douglas. Though I wouldn't call it a one-up because Punch-Out is a much better game. But with that being said, I think I was a little too hard on this game. From a sports game's view, it's not great. But from an arcade masher, it's not bad, honestly. There's only 5 characters, and the campaign mode had you fight them all twice before facing off against the final boss. Yes, it's not endless. I know, I made that mistake in my original review. That should never be watched. Anyway, the gameplay feels clunky at times, and the hit detection is really hard to follow. There's 2 buttons to punch, one to guard. The scoring isn't based on knockdowns or anything like a normal boxing game or boxing in general, but it's actually based entirely on your actual score for the round. Yeah, a Genesis game where your points actually mean something. It's also really random for how much damage each punch does. Sometimes a little, then it's a one-hit KO. But surprisingly, it's actually very satisfying. While it is a flawed game, sometimes all you want to do is smash buttons and punch things arcade style. And in that sense, this game is actually kinda fun. First run through of opponents is easy, second gets tricky to very difficult, then you fight Ironhead, who is near impossible. Don't bother trying to knock him out, trust me. Just focus on landing the hits, scores, and then just barely. Yeah! Anyway, Douglas didn't hold the title for very long. His first defense, he lost in the 3rd round to Evander Holyfield, who then got his own game. Who eventually lost to Riddick Bowe, who then got his own game, but that's Super Nintendo, so back to this. Evander Holyfield. The real deal's real deal boxing. Now this game is actually really ahead of its time. It has the basics, exhibition, 2-player versus, etc. But the career mode is very impressive for any type of game of this era. There's a save feature, which isn't completely unheard of for a Genesis game, but it's still really nice. Also, character customization, naming a boxer, choosing if they're a southpaw or right-handed, how they look, hairstyle, skin tone, clothes, etc. All pretty basic nowadays, but I've played PS2 boxing games that had the same, if not a lower level of customization than this. That's saying something. Now, as for the gameplay, for a 3-button, 16-bit layout, it's actually a brilliant simulator. 1 button for each hand, a guard button, the D-pad can change whether it's a headshot or a body blow, and hitting 2 buttons at once can throw an uppercut, or hit all 3 to taunt. Basic, but very effective. Allows for actual strategy, as simple as they're guarding on one side, hit on the other. Button mashing won't cut it here, I'll tell you now. After every fight, you get to level up your character stats by selecting from a menu of options that increase different things. Select 3 for a win and 2 if you lose. And by the way, if you turn the power off in the middle of a fight, it counts as a loss, so don't go cheating. Doing all this while building up your rank for a chance at the title shot against the great legend himself. Seems pretty great, except for one huge design flaw. Spamming a jab to the head and body can lock them against the ropes and easily score you a knockdown if done repeatedly. That is pretty bad, makes the game really easy. And while there is a couple opponents who can escape that, guess which one can't? Yeah, pretty anticlimactic. However, this story doesn't have to have a bad ending because there's a sequel! Not only is that problem fixed, but everything else has been upgraded. The visuals look nicer, the gameplay is a lot more fast-paced and exciting, there's a lot of famous boxes here instead of just Evander. The customization, for the most part, is better. Doesn't let you choose left or right-handed, which didn't change anything anyway, but it does allow you to make some silly designs and...
In this corner, player one!
Freaking voice acting. Now that is pushing the limits. This is easily the best boxing game on the Genesis, so if you're looking for one, there you go. But for every light, there's a shadow. Here's a couple starring George Foreman. Both terrible clones of different games.
George Foreman's KO Boxing.
At first glance, what's this remind you of? Yeah, but this game pales in comparison to Punch-Out! The enemy attacks are boring, the fights move way too slow, which just sums up the game right there, slow and boring. The punches do very little damage, even the special hits just tickle them. Also randomly you'll take damage when hitting them, and just look at this game. Playing this is a real drag, and I just couldn't even stomach it for more than a couple fights. Foreman for real! This is completely different, but equally as horrible. It's a shoulder view, which is a clone of another boxing game we'll get to in a second. With this game, exhibition is also yuck. The gameplay is sluggish, the punches have no sound effect or even feel of an impact, and, well, the freaking graphics are sluggish. Like, seriously, look at this, it's disgusting. Also, yeah, guess what? Less than 4 minutes into recording this footage, the game froze and I didn't care to reset it. Yeah, let that sum up how I feel about it. You know, I think I have a theory as to how any copies of this game sold. Well, of course, the Foreman name, but... oh, maybe Mommy bought this game for their kid, with a subtle hint that maybe Daddy should go back to the gym. Here's a better game that Foreman for Real tried to copy. Boxing Legends of the Ring. It's got a lot of pretty basic career modes with a password system, and it lets you choose what your fighter specializes in, offense, defense, etc. The gameplay is very similar to Foreman for Real, but this game came out a good 2 years before it, so it gets the concept points, which isn't even much. There isn't much to say here. It's an interesting idea, just slow pace and not a lot of fun. Here's a slightly better attempt at it. Chavez 2. It's the same game, but was a special version, released only in Mexico. For the most part, it's the same game, but in Spanish, and featuring the Mexican boxer Chavez. But there are slight changes and a few improvements. The ref doesn't talk when counting anymore. The gloves have an X when you're out of stamina instead of saying out, and it will make you hungry. But two notable improvements are the fact that this version actually has a health bar, and the punching speed is a lot faster, making it more enjoyable. Overall, this one isn't bad, but not too memorable. Muhammad Ali. Okay, here's a title that has some good feedback.
Who's the heavyweight champion of the world?
Wow, that's pretty edgy for a Genesis cart, and these 3D bits too. Well, from the start, this is a title that tries to push the limits, but, well, I think I was a bit hard on Buster Douglas. I think I was a little too nice to this one. There's two control setups. One of them treats it more button mashy, as in have a button for small and heavy hits, and lets the game decide which ones. And the other one, you'll hold a button down, which will make the punches map to the D-pad for more control, which I actually think is a nice touch. And of course, defense. The gameplay shows off some free range, but unfortunately gets a bit choppy when going up and down. Not too bad though. So there is potential, but a couple of things are really bizarre. First off, the punches sound really cartoony. Also, I cannot believe I let this slide, but how you move around the ring is just why? You use the D-pad, sure, but you don't just hold it down. You have to tap for each step, which feels weird. Another thing, there's no health bar, just 2 stamina bars. I can kinda see what they were going with that. But overall, it's not bad. The core gameplay is solid, and it's nice to see an attempt at a realistic approach. If only it was polished a bit better. One more. And look, one that was actually made by EA Sports, the Toughman Contest. Maybe so, but let's give it a go. Wow, it's similar to Punch-Out, but not a clone. This is actually much more like an arcade style. There's one button for each hand, and the guard button, which is in the middle, the B button. As the match starts up, we get a terribly slow referee speech, a card girl, and good lord, has she eaten in the last year? But at least they're skippable. Playing this for the first time, I just got destroyed. But after reading the manual a bit, yeah, I did that. And finding out that tapping a button will throw a light punch and holding it will throw a heavy one, that actually made quite a lot of difference. Just needing to do that tells me this is no button masher, at least not a big one. Not every fighter is the same either. Some are better at body, some are more weak to uppercuts or hooks. Small stuff, but takes away a lot of the repetitiveness that some of these titles suffered from. The punching sound effects are more satisfying than they should be, and this one is actually pretty fun if all you wanted was some old-fashioned arcade wailing. The title was actually released on the 32X as well. The 2 copies are practically the same thing, the 32X having slightly better graphics and the card girl dyed her hair a different color. But there really wasn't much point to this re-release. You need a Genesis to play it, so why not just get the Genesis version? It's basically having the same game twice on the same system. Again. Welp, that's it. It is what it is, which really isn't too good. 2 stunk, most were okay, and I can really only recommend 3 of them. You know, that's the big problem with sports games for people who aren't diehard sports fans. And I'm not gonna use the whole argument, well, that's not fantasy, I could do that in real life, because, be honest, playing like a pro, that is fantasy. It just feels really repetitive, and just thinking about it gives me a headache. Let's go play with these toys a little bit.